What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and joining me, as always, is Callum Wiggins.
One pay-per-view, two podcasters, three matches.
Isn't that freaking ridiculous? Yeah, that's our setup today. We are recording this at around 3:45 on Wednesday afternoon, and we still have 3 matches on the Hell in a Cell card. We are going to talk about WWE Hell in a Cell 2019 as much as we can, but since WWE doesn't really want to talk about it, we don't have all that much to talk about. So it's going to operate a little bit differently than what we normally do, because normally we have 7 to 10, sometimes 14 matches to talk about, and we can actually give, predictions on a predictions podcast, but they're going to seemingly wait until, I guess, Friday night after SmackDown, and they're just going to announce like a flurry of matches and stuff, and obviously we won't have enough time to be able to do that ahead of time, and that's just the way that it is. It sucks for a million different reasons this week, and it's way too busy of a week. That's also why I sound terrible, because of just being overworked and not sleeping much and sick and all that to go along with it. So apologies for my horrible nasally sound that I've got going on for this episode. We have to address the elephant in the room, the idea that there is only 3 matches on here, and just the lack of organization and promotion and details that go along with this. What are your thoughts on unpacking all that? Is this something that it's like, this is because of the Friday move, or is it because it's Premier Week?
I think Premier Week is probably the biggest factor. Their main concentration is on TV now, and they have to make TV their priority, not just based on the USA stuff, because they probably want to up ratings on that side of things. Now Fox is going to be even more demanding on the ratings side of things, I imagine, than USA ever were. And so if they have a choice between, okay, let's try and build up and put a lot of focus and attention on Hell in a Cell, or let's sell the shit out of this Fox show on Friday, then they're going to go the Fox show every single time. So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of the matches that you probably would have seen at Hell in a Cell, like Kingston against Brock for the title, Shane against Kevin Owens in a ladder match, you're going to get on the SmackDown as opposed to at Hell in a Cell.
I'm really hoping that this is just a perfect storm of too much going on, and let's put this out there too. It also doesn't excuse it, because when you've got so many people working for the company and so many different things, I'm pretty sure that you could get one person to make a graphic and announce a match on Twitter. It's Wednesday early evening, essentially, and we still don't know 70% of the card. It's usually between 7 to 10 matches on all these cards, and we only know 3. There are ways to do it. We've gotten plenty of things. Like, they could have announced something. I didn't watch the episode, but so far the news has not mentioned any match that's being announced on the bump. But they very easily could have been like, hey, Kayla, throw out there that the Raw Tag Team titles are going to be defended, or something like that. They've got the ability to tweet something out at any point in the day by just going on their phone or something like that. Any wrestler could do it and just announce something. Like, I can't imagine what match that he would have had, but like Baron Corbin could go on Twitter and just go, hey, at Hell in a Cell this weekend, I'm going to face Rusev. And it could have been like, okay, there you go, match announced. And it takes him 2 seconds on his phone to log into Twitter. Like, there's no excuse to not have these matches announced at a time, unless they specifically just do not want people to know, because they want to try to be like, well, let's wait until Friday, and then we're going to go, this match is announced, and this match is announced, and oh my god, isn't that crazy? All these things are happening. WWE, you never know when we can announce things and stuff like that. That might be their philosophy, or they might think, we really want all this other stuff to take priority, and we want all of the attention to be on Charlotte Flair as posing with the local police force to promote SmackDown and all that, which I kind of, maybe you agree or disagree with me on this one. I kind of feel like people are going to pay attention to what they're going to pay attention to, and if you give them too much, it's not going to change. Like, if anybody's following the WWE Twitter account, they're not going to see a match that's announced for the United States title and think, oh, I'm not going to read that thing about SmackDown. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of understand that. I go along the lines of thinking that they, I assume in their mind, this SmackDown show is going to get a huge rating. And it's going to get a lot of fresh eyes on the product that haven't seen it before because they're just tuning in on Fox for the first time and see that SmackDown's on and thought, okay, let's check it out, see what's going on, try and get some lapsed fans back into the mix. And so they'll use that platform to try and promote Hell in a Cell, from announce as many matches as they possibly can on that show. And that might encourage some people to actually buy the network and subscribe to see it, as opposed to just announcing it on Raw, where the majority of the fan base will just be people that are watching week to week anyway. And that'll be the case for SmackDown as well, but they probably hope that it will have enough of a boost for being on a new network and being free to air, essentially, as opposed to being on cable, to get a few more eyes on them.
And I hope that that's not the case going forward.
No,
I'm really hoping that this week they're focused on all that stuff, and then for Crown Jewel, for instance, that we're not waiting, because that's going to be on Thursday, which is like, oh god, come on, Thursday afternoon, that's when it's going to happen, or Thursday morning, technically. And I don't want them to be like, all right, well, we're going to wait until Wednesday afternoon to announce the matches for Thursday, you know?
I think realistically, this is just a one-off situation. As much as we bemoan WWE's lack of organisation, I think this is just a one-off situation where they haven't had all the matches booked up and they're just trying to get as many eyes on the SmackDown show as they possibly can, and so they're putting all of their attention onto that instead. I think going forward, at the very least, we might have one or two matches that at a future pay-per-view won't be announced until after the final SmackDown of the week, and the rest of the card will be pretty filled up by that point. And also, I don't know, obviously I assume it has had a negative effect on ticket sales, but I still don't really know at the moment how much value like superstars have on the tickets that are sold, as opposed to just WWE the brand. I mean, just assuming that nowadays people just buy because WWE's in town, as opposed to, oh, Seth Rollins is fighting the Fiend, or oh, Braun Strowman is going to go up against Randy Orton, or whatever. It's just, I don't think that sells people as much as it used to anymore.
I almost kind of feel, and I don't know the statistics behind it to back up my claims and stuff, but I almost sort of feel like, if anything, certain matches might hurt that as opposed to help. Like, if you announce a couple really big things, then sure, that's gonna, if Hell in a Cell was like, we're gonna have Shawn Michaels come out of retirement, he's gonna fight Triple H, and it's going to be for ownership of NXT in a Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker as a special guest referee, people will be like, whoa, this is a hell of a lot more interesting than Shinsuke Nakamura defending the Intercontinental title against Ali again, or something, And if you announce a card and the 10 matches on the card all look like they're mediocre, then I'm sure people would be like, it's my area, but I really don't feel like paying to see that. And this is like, I will... glass half full, glass half empty, that kind of thing. If you're looking glass half full, maybe WWE is just trying something out here. Maybe they're taking this and they're going, look, we got to promote NXT, we got to promote Raw, because that way USA doesn't feel like they're completely ignored. And we have to put a lot on SmackDown. We've got NXT UK and 205 Live, which we don't really care about. Main Event, which we don't even acknowledge exists on our website. So we do have to figure that stuff out, and we also have all these different media appearances and stuff, and Hell in a Cell, we just got off of Clash of Champions, we got Crown Jewel coming up, we got Survivor Series coming up. Let's really just kind of treat Hell in a Cell as if it's like an extra little special thing, the way that we've done the network specials, and see what happens if we don't announce things ahead of time. Maybe if we just have a 3-match card, maybe we can get away with it, and then we can try that out in the future. If not, and the ticket sales are awful, and the network subscription thing is down, then we know for Survivor Series that we need to have a game plan ahead of time, which really you should have had a game plan months ago, but that's a whole other thing. Maybe that's where they're taking this. And maybe they are thinking that SmackDown will have so many eyes on the product that they can announce a bunch of matches and all that. But I also feel like if you're looking at glass half empty, you're like, well, not everybody watches both shows or all shows. And if those people are watching SmackDown and they didn't watch Raw, they're going to hear it for the first time anyway. So that wouldn't matter, And like you don't have to have like something be the first time that you're announcing something for it to be that's how you know your information, because it is very, very close to the event. And if you, for instance, don't watch SmackDown on Friday night, maybe you don't get around to it until Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a fair point, but I just feel it's the most likely. It's more likely that people will be watching. A lot more people will end up watching SmackDown than end up watching the pay-per-view, regardless of how many matches they'd booked anyway. So it gives you a better shot of doing it, and at least it gives them something to not sort of fill up the time on SmackDown with, but to make SmackDown feel important. Or you only get announcements like this on SmackDown because this is the big show on Fox. Some to the extent of saying to all the new people that are tuning in that may not watch or haven't watched in a while that SmackDown is a big deal.
I just really hope that this is not their game plan going forward, to be like waiting until the last minute, because this has fucked so many things up on my schedule as it is. And yeah, this is a personal gripe, and this is not something that WWE gives a shit about, but like the weekly articles in Smark at Moment, they have to wait until Friday night, Saturday morning now, because you can't review the whole week until SmackDown is done. And I got like 7, 8, maybe even more than that, pay-per-view related things where I'm like, well, I guess I gotta wait until Friday night too. And it's like, basically do a whole week's worth of work on Friday night. And that's bullshit. And for anybody that's curious about how that's going to affect the podcast and stuff going forward, this week is a good test of that, assuming that they don't fix that problem and make it easier in the future. And that's why we're spending a little bit of time talking about this. Obviously, we're not going to talk about stuff like this every single pay-per-view and be like, they didn't announce everything and we have to whatever, but we got to fill in the blank somehow. And if you want to know any more information that happens, you're going to have to check out smarkatmoment.com, and you're going to have to check out the Twitter and some different things like that, because we can't do like an updated pay-per-view predictions podcast on Saturday. We just can't do like throw another pay-per-view predictions thing on the schedule. It's going to be too hard. So we don't know how this is going to work out any more than anybody else does, but if you have any opinions about this whole situation, drop a comment below, and keep that in mind throughout this whole podcast too, because if you're on the audio only platforms like iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and so forth, then hop over to YouTube, drop a comment on your thoughts on the way that they've handled this situation, the Hell in a Cell card, our predictions, your predictions. Leave a comment below. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube already, do that and ring that little bell for the notifications, because if things do get posted, and maybe I do find the time to have like a small package video or something like that on like a Saturday afternoon, then you'll be aware of it. That's the best way to do that. Also hit the like button too, because that helps.
You can always find time for that small package, don't you?
Sometimes I don't even have enough time to brush my teeth in a day. That's how busy my schedule is. That's how awful everything is too. So, that is part of the discussion that we have to talk about with that. And coinciding with that means the idea of, well, we don't know the rest of the matches, so we got to fill in the blanks a little bit. I am assuming, of course, that Brock Lesnar beats Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship, and a lot of people are going back and forth, and they're trying to discuss, well, what happens with the WWE title at Hell in a Cell? Do they do a rematch? Is it Kofi versus Brock for the title again? If Brock wins, who does he face if he faces somebody new? If Kofi retains, which is not going to happen, does he face Brock in a rematch, or does he face somebody new? I'm more of the opinion, nothing. I think Brock wins the title, and they just completely skip him out on the Hell in a Cell card. What do you think?
I think if Brock is to win the WWE Championship on SmackDown, then there won't be a WWE Championship match at Hell in a Cell. I believe there will be a number one contenders match for the SmackDown Championship instead. And I don't know who will be involved in that match. Obviously, Kingston would likely be one of the people involved. And I don't know whether it'd be like just a singles match or a fatal four-way or whatever. You could put people like Orton in there. You could say Kingston gets injured in the match against Lesnar. You could throw in Big E as a replacement instead. You could throw Mysterio in there after what happened on Raw. So I'm mostly convinced that Brock is going to win. I still think that the only way that Brock doesn't win is if the person who Brock will be feuding with going forward interferes in that match and costs him it. It won't be due to Kingston overcoming the odds and beating him clean in the middle of the ring. But that's the only caveat. If Kingston retains somehow, then I think we do get a WWE Championship match. I just don't know who it would be against.
And to kind of spoil some of the matches that we're going to be talking about, I'm expecting 2 title changes to happen at Hell in a Cell. So I don't think that they would hold off on having Lesnar win the title. I think that they would rather that happen on SmackDown too. So anybody that's tossing out the suggestion, which I've seen here and there, that maybe they would do like a count out or a DQ and then have like Brock and Kofi again and Brock beats him at Hell in a Cell. Nah, he's beating him at SmackDown. That's where the money is. And at most, if Brock does end up fighting at Hell in a Cell, it'll just be like the standard rematch. Well, Kofi Kingston gets a shot to win his title back and whatever like that, even though the rematch clause doesn't exist, but we're WWE, so we don't follow our own rules. And if they were to do like a number one contenders match, I would have thought that they would do maybe Kofi versus Orton. Except now they've already announced for Crown Jewel that Orton's going to be a part of that. He's going to be team captain for Team Flair. So that's where some of the confusion kind of gets in a little bit of the mix too, because I kind of can't imagine that they would do, say, Brock beats Kofi for the title this week. And then Kofi and Randy just get announced as like, after SmackDown, they just say, by the way, we just decided on a whim this match is going to happen. Or on Saturday afternoon, they just announce, based off of what happened last night on SmackDown, we're going to have Kofi Kingston versus Randy Orton in a number one contenders match. And then Kofi wins. And Crown Jewel would be the next time that you would see that. Unless they would just do that rematch again on SmackDown. And I don't know. To me, I wouldn't book the rematch for the title the next week on SmackDown. I would think that would be like, we just saw this last week. What the hell? That kind of thing. So that already takes Orton out of the mix a little bit. Maybe they do like a Fatal 4-Way. Maybe they do a Battle Royal. Maybe they do something like that. But I'm leaning more towards the idea that it's just Brock beats Kofi and then, well, we just had him fight, so let's not have that. And let's fill in Hell in a Cell with other matches. I think we're getting no WWE title match whatsoever. And actually not even a number one contenders match either.
Yeah. That's a very real possibility. I still would think that just to fill up space for anything else, they put some sort of number one contenders match on there. But again, it all we won't know this for certain until Friday.
Technically, we won't even know this until probably Sunday. Like, they very well easily could wait until Sunday to announce these matches. And if that's the case, I'm so screwed.
Yeah, it's potential that they could do that.
God.
I wouldn't put it past them at this point.
How many times have we had where they've had not these issues in the past, and then on, like, the pay-per-view, like, on the pre-show, they've been like, we added a pre-show match or something, and you're like, all right, let me rush and do that real quick or something.
Well, yeah, there is a potential for a very high likelihood that they just announce it on the show itself, as opposed to even, like, minutes or hours beforehand.
And if that does happen, I hope that WWE realizes that no promotion ahead of time for 70% of what the whole thing is going to be is not a good idea if we're building up hype for that, because if we start hearing the whole reports of like, well, ticket sales are really low and it doesn't seem like a lot of people are all that interested, and it turns out that nobody actually tuned into Hell in a Cell to see what would happen at Hell in a Cell without knowing ahead of time, then I hope that WWE goes, all right, we can't do that in the future. Fuck, we just
Well,
write off Hell in a Cell, and we shouldn't have done it. We were too close to Clash of Champions. We should have just waited, you know?
well, in fairness, getting all the matches sorted out and promoted weeks in advance doesn't really do too much to help their ticket sales either. So
No, but if it ends up being a lot worse,
I can't
like,
imagine it being much worse than it currently is.
it could be. They could end up tarping off a whole bunch of this if that's the case. Because I know that I wouldn't, like, if this were in my area, I wouldn't be like, you know what, I'm going to spend $200 on a ticket and hope that the matches are good.
This is well, this may just be my weird way of looking at it, but I'd almost be more intrigued if I didn't know what the matches were going to be, and then just turn up and it's almost like a potluck thing.
That's the gambler mentality. I don't have that.
Yeah, I
I'm
lost quite.
more like, I look at things as being like, every dime that I spend, I want to make sure I justify, kind of thing. So I never do good with gambling.
See, I went to the arcade earlier today and I lost about 40 quid on a 10p slot machine.
For anybody that's interested in the gambling side of things, this is kind of more like an all talk show discussion kind of sort of thing, or even a mailbag question. But my gambling philosophies are pretty much like, the last time I went to a casino, it was a couple years ago, and I put in, I think, like $10 in a slot machine. And I was like, you know what? If I lose this $10, okay. And I ended up coming out like $8 ahead. And I was like, I'm cashing out. And my friends are all like, what the fuck? I just spent like $200 on like poker or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, this paid for my lunch. I'm good. I put in $10. I walked out with 18. I won. And that's like the worst type of gambler for anybody who's actually like thinks that that's fun. You're just like, you just sapped all the fun out of this thing. So there's no way I would be like, all right, it's $200 for a ticket or whatever. Let me just hope that the rest of the matches are good and all that. Well, I mean, it kind of depends. If you think that the 3 matches that they've already announced are things that you're super interested in, then you're not taking as much of a gamble. I'm personally not all that into the matches that we have announced. So all the rest of the card is going to be really what makes it for me. And if they just do like Cedric versus Styles again for like the 9th time, then I'm going to be like, damn it, I wasted that money, But the WWE title situation, we are not going to know that at the very least until after SmackDown's title match is over with, because they're not going to announce ahead of time like Kofi versus somebody for a number 1 contenders match, because then that spoils that he loses the title. And I'm assuming that they won't even probably be able to catch up and announce it after SmackDown. I think that we're going to have to wait until Saturday. So I will update things for smarkoutmoment.com, but we won't do the podcast side of things. Let's talk some other matches that might be on the card here. We need a SmackDown Women's Championship match, I would assume. And I'm kind of assuming it's just Bayley versus Charlotte.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm most certain about being added out of anything. Because they haven't built up anybody else for Bayley to face.
The only other person would potentially be Carmella, and that seems like a weird path to go down. Like, why wouldn't they go with Charlotte over her? Because Charlotte lost that match, but she kind of didn't. Like, they really did. They went out of their way to make it seem like it's like, well, Charlotte barely had a match with Bayley.
Yeah, Charlotte took 90% of that match and lost to 1 move.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, they haven't built anyone else really up for it. And the only chance, I mean, Carmella is the other potential, but she'll be busy probably doing segments with the 24/7 title.
Either that or she's just not going to be a part of the card.
Yeah.
So, if it ends up being Bayley versus Charlotte, I'm spoiling my prediction for later. I think Bayley retains.
I really don't know about that one. I'd probably go Charlotte, just because I assume the other title is potentially changing hands as well, and I think they might keep Charlotte on that side of things.
So you know what? Let's just talk about it. Let's loop it in here. Actually, no. I'm gonna change your mind. I'm gonna put a pin in this. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, I think that we need to talk draft. We need to talk lots of different things, and we'll get around to that in a minute or so. Very quickly, though, I will toss out a plug while I'm at it. If you want to hear more things that are on the side of trying to do some extra little pay-per-view type talk, and you really, when it comes down to this whole idea of the card changes on a Friday, and I really want you guys to chime in on it or something like that, the best way to motivate to find the time to do this kind of stuff, it's Patreon. So patreon.com/smarkoutmoment. If you donate and you request that kind of a thing and you get to that tier, then by the sheer nature of the whole thing, then I'll figure out the time to do it. So that's something that's I'm all over the place. God, this week. Something that you should definitely take into consideration. Even if it's just donating $1 or something like that, it all helps out quite a bit. Yeah, I'm going Bayley, you're going Flair. Cruiserweight Championship is a potential for this. Drew Gulak does have a number one contender. It's Lio Rush, but at the same time, they haven't done anything to build that up other than the idea that NXT is when Lio Rush won that number one contender spot, and that's it. So unless they rush it and they do something on 205 Live on Friday night to kind of build that up, I kind of can't see them throwing that on there, but maybe they just fill in the blank with another cruiserweight match. Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch did beat Tony Nese and Drew Gulak on the last episode of 205 Live. So if they wanted to do something and put a pin in the Lio Rush feud, maybe they have like Danny Burch versus Drew Gulak, and it's a completely throwaway match that nobody would be all that interested in, but it's something on the card. Pre-show, obviously.
I would imagine that they do put the Gulak versus Rush match on, because at least, I mean, if you just throw Gulak and Burch on, you might as well just not have a cruiserweight title match. No offense to Danny Burch with that regard. It's got no build whatsoever, and it's between two guys that aren't particularly interesting on their own. I think if it's Rush against Gulak, then Gulak retains, but he does it in a nefarious way, which means that Rush can get a rematch down the line.
I hate that so much, but it's definitely an option. One of my biggest criticisms in WWE is when they stall something because they just don't want to do anything else other than just, well, we'll do it again. And even though I have no real solid interest in like Gulak versus Burch, I'd rather see that and for them to hold off on the Lio Rush thing until they can properly build it than to be like, let's do this match knowing that we're not really going to do it, and then we can just do it again. Because that just bugs me. That's like getting like a buy one, get one free type thing, and they up the price and double it. And you're like, well, you're not getting it for free then, you know? That kind of stuff just bugs me so much. So, in any case, I think that Gulak retains no matter who he faces, unless there is some kind of a weird thing with this draft and they plan on moving Gulak. Because maybe they move him to Raw or SmackDown and they just kind of put him in as like a regular member of like the SmackDown crew. If that's the case, then he needs to drop that title. Probably. And maybe they would give it to Lio Rush and all that. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I would think no matter who Gulak faces, if Gulak faces anybody, he's going to retain. Do you think that there's a chance that Rush wins that title?
Of course, there's a chance. And again, it's along the lines of Gulak moving up to either SmackDown or Raw. I'm getting more of a distinct possibility that when 205 Live goes away, they'll try and go off with a bang, and their final show will be Gulak losing the title to somebody. And then that transition to the Cruiserweight title being on NXT full time.
Yeah, I think that could be the case. And we've got potential other titles that could get in the mix, but I don't think they will. Like, for instance, the Intercontinental Championship. Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn are not really necessarily feuding with anybody right now. Do you got a feeling of who they might end up going up against?
I would have thought Ali until Nakamura defeated Ali last week.
For like the 7th time.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's potential. I mean, John Morrison's apparently re-signed with the company if he was to come back for that show.
He might not have.
Yeah, he might not have, but if those rumors are true, then that would be someone that could potentially come back. Like if they came back on SmackDown and challenged him there, and that was how the match was made on like the Fox episode of SmackDown, then maybe that's how you do it. Other potential people, I mean, Miz got screwed out of it last time, but they haven't really done anything to build that back up recently. The only other options would be like bringing Buddy Murphy back in from the cold, or I don't know, Kevin Owens beat Shane McMahon and Shane McMahon's gone and Kevin Owens is rewarded with an Intercontinental title match.
I could see if they wanted to put somebody on there and just say, have like Nakamura and Sami Zayn come out, cut a promo, and do a surprise match at Hell in a Cell. Maybe they could do Aleister Black and have him like quote unquote pick a fight with Shinsuke Nakamura. Maybe even win the title. That could be the case.
I mean, he'd have to win it at that point. You wouldn't. I know he hasn't done much yet, but having him lose his first real big match against Nakamura just doesn't feel like the right way to do things. I mean, it's the way WWE does things, but it's not the right way to do it, I don't think.
They could also do that kind of a cop-out thing where they have like a scheduled time blocked off on the pay-per-view where Nakamura and Zayn go out there, they cut a promo, Aleister Black comes out to pick a fight, and all they do is fight, and it's not actually a match. They could do that kind of bullshit, which I really hope that they don't do.
Or I think they could do something like he issues an open challenge on behalf of Nakamura, but when Aleister Black comes out, Sami Zayn says, actually the open challenge is with me, not Nakamura, and then they have a match instead.
They could do like Apollo Crews if they just want to beat somebody. They could have maybe Chad Gable transitions over to that, but I think that that's more of a Corbin feud still. Can't see a Kevin Owens situation happening. Can't see like Matt Hardy being thrown in there. Maybe there's a chance that Finn Balor comes back and he wins that Intercontinental title, because he did drop that title to Nakamura, and Survivor Series is coming up. Nakamura is not as big of a draw as Finn Balor is when it comes to the idea of potentially facing AJ Styles for the United States title versus Intercontinental title situation. I can maybe see that happening. He's on a hiatus and not injured. He got married and stuff like that. So maybe Balor comes back. Actually, you know what? That could be something that they could probably do pretty easily. If they want SmackDown, for instance, to have like a segment where Nakamura and Zayn come out and cut a promo and Balor just shows up and attacks them, then they can just go, just announce Balor is going to fight Nakamura at Hell in a Cell. They could do that.
They could. I mean, say how easily they can do it. It's not very easy if Balor doesn't want to come back just yet.
Oh, that's the big... Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit of a spanner in the works if that's the case.
If he's still just like vacationing in Cabo or where the hell he was, then it's just sort of like, you can't just put a hologram out there, or like one of those people with the standee fat head type things or something, and it's like, I'm Finn Balor, I will fight you. Like, they can't pull that off. But that could be a way to get around that. That's easy. That's a 5-minute segment to set up something, and it's got enough of like a wow factor to it that people won't really be like, there's no build to this. It would be like, well, Balor is back. That's all we're interested in. Dangle those keys in front of me. I'm a little child. That's where I'd go more than anything. Yeah, I think that push comes to shove, if Nakamura fights anybody, he's going to fight Balor, I think.
Okay.
United States title, AJ Styles retained a bunch of times against Cedric Alexander. Who's left for him?
Well, that's, again, it's the interesting aspect is that the Universal Championship we already know is going to be defended anyway, but both the United States Championship and the Raw Tag Team titles were both defended on the last episode of Raw. So if you're going by the kayfabe logic, they don't have to defend their title for another 30 days.
Right.
So I think in all likelihood, we won't see a United States Championship match. We might see something that, like Rob suggested in the chat to us, that they just do a 6-man tag team match that we've seen before now anyway, with the OC against Cedric Alexander and the Viking Raiders.
I really hope that if they book matches like that, that they know that they're just being lazy. And that they don't actually think that that's like something to get pat on the back for, you know?
That's a time filler match above like anything else. Nobody would order the pay-per-view wanting to see that match because they saw it 2 or 3 weeks ago.
But I hope that they actually realize that that's the case.
Yeah, I assume they do. I think that would be a decision they make, knowing that no one's actually too invested in watching this match. They're just there. We need something to fill up the 3 or 4 hours this show's going to be going on for.
You know, that's actually worth talking about here. What is your philosophy on this idea? Would you rather them fill in the card and make it a 4-hour event like they normally do, and just have it be kind of know-nothing, meaningless matches like that? Or would you rather them actually say, you know what, screw it, let's have this not be a big event, and have, like, 2 more matches on the card, and it's a 2-hour event?
In this age where there is too much wrestling on at any given moment in time, yes, I'd rather it was just stuck to these 3 matches.
Me too. And that's really kind of strange, because if you gave me like a half an hour pre-show where you just explain the 3 matches, like you take the half an hour to put 10 minutes per match, and you run the video packages, and you just say like, here's the pre-show panel giving their analysis for the feuds between these 3 matches and stuff, and you make it 2 hours where each match has a half an hour plus, like a 35-minute match range, and then you got a little bit of leeway to add 1 more match onto the card, a 4th thing. It's just kind of like an impromptu whatever, I don't know, or maybe even cut it short at that point. I'd rather that. I don't want to see Styles versus Cedric Alexander for the 5th time. They're good, and like the matches are good, but I know that it's not going to matter, and that's what's going to kill it for me.
Well, I don't want to see a load of repeated matches that I'm not going to care about, but I also don't want to see a shorter number of matches go an excessively long amount of time. I know a lot of people can pull off those lengthy matches nowadays due to like the athleticism that they have, but let's put it this way, I don't think Seth Rollins versus The Fiend should go 30 plus minutes.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
And to be fair, most matches shouldn't go 30 plus minutes, because if there's a lot of resting around and doing nothing in matches. The reason why big 30-minute matches are so epic is because not all of them are capable of doing that. Not every wrestler is capable of doing those matches, and you don't see them as often as the other 10 to 15-minute long matches you typically get on a pay-per-view. And so I'd rather they have these 3 matches, but that means that I'd rather the show just went for like an hour and a half, and that'd be it.
Yeah, ultimately, I think I'd agree with that too. Make them 15, 20-minute matches or so. Give them the time that they need, but at the same time, don't drag it out too much. That makes sense.
It's also an indicator of the new era that we're in, where if it was in the past where it was a pay-per-view you had to shell out $50 for, then yeah, and if it only went for an hour, you probably feel pretty ripped off. Whereas nowadays, you're paying for the network anyway, regardless of kind of what they show on a month-to-month basis. So it doesn't really affect you either way. You just want it to be shorter because there's too much on right now.
And to be fair, this is not a justification as far as like pricing of the way that certain things are, but it's just the nature of the beast. If you spend $10 on the WWE Network and all you watch for 1 month is 1 pay-per-view, you've spent $10 for the pay-per-view. And if you go to the movies, I don't know what the average ticket price is for every single area, but I know for my area, if I go to like an AMC and I go to like a night show, because why am I going to go in the middle of the day? Like, it's fucking weird if you leave the movies and it's laid out. Then if I go, like, for instance, tomorrow night is when Joker comes out. My ticket for that is not a 3D show, because it's not, a 3D movie, and it's still $15. So for $5 more, I'm watching a 2-hour movie. And for $9.99 on the WWE Network, I'm watching a 4-hour event. It's still relatively a good deal compared to that kind of thing. Now, movie tickets should not be $15 a piece just to see a 2-hour movie, but you can justify it a little bit in that way and be like, it's not like you're being ripped off. It's just a matter of, I don't know if I want to sit and watch that. And if we do end up getting like the OC against Viking Raiders and Cedric Alexander, is the match going to be good? I'm sure it'll be fine. They're all talented. I just won't care.
Yeah, pretty much the same attitude that I'm taking to it.
If I had to put a gun to my head, though, and say that there's somebody who fights AJ Styles for the United States Championship, I can't imagine it being anybody but another Cedric Alexander match. They're not going to just randomly throw The Miz in there or give Ricochet another shot, I think. So I don't think it's going to happen.
No, it would just be if it is someone random, it would have to be under the guise that it's an open challenge and somebody just gets pulled out for a little while to have a match with Styles.
Yeah, and then that could be anybody. It could be because the wild card rule is still in effect. Now, the Raw Tag Team titles, Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, they could go up against AOP, which I highly doubt that's the case. They could go up against Viking Raiders. They could go up against the Usos in a surprise return. I don't think that's going to happen either. They already had their Heavy Machinery match. They're on SmackDown anyway, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm thinking that that's a no-go too.
Yeah, I don't think they'll defend their titles. Because if they would, it would be against the Viking Raiders, and I think if Viking Raiders face Roode and Ziggler, they should win the titles, and they won't do it just yet.
What about the SmackDown Tag Team titles? The Revival are holding them right now. They could technically go up against the New Day. They could go up against the Usos in a surprise thing. They could do Heavy Machinery. They could have some kind of 6-man tag thing again with like Orton and the Revival against the New Day. I hope that they don't, but
I think the most likely situation would be Revival facing the New Day again in a rematch.
Part of me kind of thinks that maybe Heavy Machinery gets another match.
After losing their last title shot, they're just given another title shot.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And I'm not saying that to try and shoot that proposition down, because it's as likely to happen as anything else, because they don't really care about the win-loss records. But I don't see them so brazenly going from, okay, Heavy Machinery just lost their match, let's give them another title shot from the other titles instead. I think if anybody's going to challenge the Revival for the titles, it'll be the New Day.
Do you think we're getting Rusev versus Bobby Lashley?
I would have to imagine so now. It's not exactly the one that I'm most looking forward to, but it was one of the two closing images of Raw, about the Raw season premiere. So it seemed odd if that wasn't a match on the pay-per-view now.
Well, they could wait and they could just do that on Raw next week.
I'm sure. Well, I'm sure even this would just be the first match in a feud would last for a couple of months now, at the very least. I don't even know. I'm wondering, trying to picture in my mind what Paul Heyman sees as the end goal for this feud. Does it end with Lana going back to Rusev eventually? Does it end with Bobby Lashley and Lana just being a unit on one brand, and Rusev gets drafted over to the other one, and so Lana and Rusev are separated and so aren't traveling together anymore? Does it?
Yeah.
Does it end with them trying to ruin Rusev's marriage before he leaves for AEW? Who knows?
Yeah, that would be awful if that's the case, isn't it? Jeez.
But you wouldn't put it past them, though.
No, that's why I laughed about it, because it's Stranger Things. You
would have thought they'd go with a better option than Lashley then, because Lashley's Lashley's got a great body, but he's a bit. Again, we're going sexy superstar tour territory now. They're
Lashley hasn't gotten that far in that tournament.
Yeah. Oh, let's give BC3 another push instead. So, he's the one who's been stripping Lana behind the scenes.
I hope if they do Lashley versus Rusev, again, to echo sentiments that I had before, that they don't just book that as being let's save it for Raw, and that we have Rusev versus Lashley at Hell in a Cell and it ends in a DQ. I'll hate this fucking pay-per-view if that's the case. If this is all just Let's wait until the last minute to announce matches, and they're all going to be like bullshit count out and DQ type finishes and stuff. And then that way you can tune in the Raw. I'm going to easily make this my least favorite pay-per-view of the year.
I could see the match, like, it being a non-match where Rusev is in the ring and Bobby Lashley comes out for it and he makes out with Lana again on the stage. Rusev just goes up and beat him up, and so we have a brawl that lasts for a few minutes rather than a match itself.
Hate it. I hate so much of that. Maybe they can play around a little bit with this, and maybe they can do something like the Chad Gable feud might be continuing with that. They haven't. This is what's weird about this too. Crown Jewel, they announced. We talked about this on the hot tags. Go back and listen to that if you haven't already, everybody. They announced that Rusev and Rollins are a part of Team Hogan, and they announced that Orton and Corbin are a part of Team Flair. They still haven't announced that Bobby Lashley is a part of Team Flair. And I would assume if this feud between Corbin and Gable continues, that Gable would make perfect sense to join Team Hogan. So if they go with the logic of the situation, then Lashley and Gable should be 2 more people that we should add to the mix, and we're only missing 4 other people. Maybe they could get away with doing something like Gable and Rusev have a tag team match against Corbin and Lashley at Hell in a Cell. It's not really like great. It's not imaginative. It's not something that I would have booked ahead of time. I would have actually booked Hell in a Cell ahead of time if I would have been the case. I would have taken the 10 minutes worth of work to actually plan it out. And it's not something that I'm all that interested in. But it's at least something that continues that, and it gets another match on the card. I could see that potentially happening. Or they just do another singles match between Corbin and Gable, maybe.
Yeah, I could see Corbin and Gable having another match, because the last one ended in a DQ finish anyway. But I don't know what you do with that one. Do you have Gable beat Corbin and kind of render the King of the Ring win really pointless? Or do you have what I assume would happen if that match would take place, which is Gable gets distracted towards the end by Elias to continue their burgeoning feud?
Yeah, because that is a feud that's going on right now, but that's also kind of on the back burner because Elias is supposedly dealing with an injury.
Yeah, he's still not back to match fitness.
That maybe, like, depending on his potential return time, maybe he would be another member of Team Flair, and that could be their way of being like, oh, look at that, Elias came in and he screwed things up, and we're going to also announce him for Team Flair. They could do that. Because Crown Jewel is the 31st. They've got 30 days almost. Maybe that'll be enough time for him to come back.
Yeah, that seems like a possible way they could go.
I'm trying to look through the card right now, or not the card, through the roster right now, and I'm kind of blanking on anything else that they might be able to add. Like, if you want a fantasy book, you can throw some random things out there. Technically, like, you could just be like Kabuki Warriors against Fire Desire, but none of that seems like that they're going in a direction for that. So,
well, the only thing that I thought that could potentially be added is Kabuki Warriors' challenge for the tag team titles, because they defeated Fire and Desire on SmackDown. But the likelihood is that they'll just be chasing Carmella behind the scenes with Dana Brooke and the
Iconics.
Yeah, and Sarah Logan and all that other stuff.
Kevin Owens and Shane McMahon, they've got their match at SmackDown. I don't think that there's going to be any spillover from that. Do you?
It very much depends on how that match finishes, and if someone helps Owens win, because that would be a very un-babyface thing to do, but helps Shane win. Maybe you have like Drew McIntyre interfere in that match, because he should be close to making a comeback now, but Owens still manages to overcome and win, and then you get Owens against McIntyre. But that's probably about as far as it would go.
And I think, I might be wrong about it, but I think that part of the stipulation for this whole ladder match is that would be the end of Owens.
Yeah,
like
if Owens loses,
done.
Yeah, whoever loses gets fired, essentially.
Yeah, so they wouldn't be able to book that without just negating logic again.
No, obviously, Owens would have to win, and it would be a case of if McIntyre interferes, then Owens would have to foil his interference and still beat Shane McMahon.
Oh yeah.
And if Owens is somehow to lose, then he would probably just go to NXT.
Can't see them doing anything with Orton. Can't see them doing anything with, like... No, yeah, I can't see that either. Like, the B team and some other people, no. Andrade, no. Yeah, I'm really, like, running out of options as far as, like, maybe they waste their time by having Lacey Evans against Natalya in another match. Maybe they book, like, Rey Mysterio against Cesaro, just because Cesaro kind of crapped all over that.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably worth trying to figure out any other matches for it, because realistically they could put anything together to just try and fill out time, but there's nothing that really makes any more sense logically based on the current storylines they have going on.
Braun Strowman didn't do anything this week, did he?
No, he was selling the injury from the Fiend.
Okay. So yeah, so even Braun Strowman's got nothing going on. Man, I don't know. This is a pain in the butt. But we do know 3 matches on the card. And before we get into that, let me just remind everybody that there are some other things that we take care of all the time. One of them being that I do Fanboys Anonymous related material. And at the very least, if we don't know what's happening with the WWE side of things, I know what's happening with Joker. So I will be reviewing that tomorrow night. And I'll have that up on the channel as soon as I possibly can. So subscribe to the YouTube channel on Fanboys Anonymous and hit that little notification bell thing, and then you'll know when that gets posted. Or if you follow the Facebook and Twitter, at the facebooks.com/fanboysanonymous, the Twitter is fanboysanon. Then when I post the thing on the actual website itself, then you'll get that notification too. And if you're interested in what I think as far as the 6 Flicks picks for October, yes, I plan that stuff out ahead of time because I like planning things and I like being organized, unlike WWE. And I looked through the list of the movies that are coming out for this month, and I was like, you know what? Which movies would I see if that's the case and all that? So check out 6 Flicks Picks. That's another thing. But let's talk about the 3 matches we do know. One of them being Roman Reigns teaming up with Daniel Bryan against the Bludgeon Brothers, Erick Rowan and Luke Harper, who have still, to my knowledge, not been referred to as the Bludgeon Brothers again since their return.
No, that clearly doesn't seem to be their gimmick anymore.
Now they're just Rowan and Harper.
Because Rowan's talking now and is being positioned as, I guess, a tortured soul almost. Like a guy who has something to say and has always been in the background, and now he's getting his chance to be in the spotlight.
More and more, I keep feeling like Erick Rowan keeps getting these Lars Sullivan spots.
I think that's harsh on Erick Rowan.
What do you mean?
I think Rowan is deserving of this sort of spotlight. He's been in the company, 6-7 years now?
I don't mean he's not deserving. I mean that, like, he's filling in the blank for Lars Sullivan.
Oh, that's what you meant. Sorry, I thought you meant, like, he's just getting pushed because he's big and he's ugly.
No, like, they did a thing years ago, back in 2014, 2015, where Rowan had split from the Wyatt family and they started to make him where he was, like, smart. And eventually they gave that gimmick to Lars Sullivan. It wasn't quite the same, but it was very similar. It was, I'm a big, ugly freak beast who is actually very intelligent. And when Sullivan was going over to SmackDown, they ended up pairing this whole Daniel Bryan and Erick Rowan thing together. And they gave Rowan the person who's the big brute that's next to him, and he's actually smarter than you're giving him credit and all this. And I felt back then that seemed like a Lars Sullivan type of thing. Lars Sullivan got injured. He's been out for a couple months. And now we're getting an even more focus on that. And he's feuding with Roman Reigns. And I kind of am thinking, you know what? It seems like this could have been a spot for Lars Sullivan. And it would have been just Lars against Roman Reigns.
I don't know if the genius gimmick would have worked as well for Lars Sullivan because he wasn't smart enough to delete his internet history. But yeah, I could definitely see it be a case that Daniel Bryan was to bring on Lars Sullivan instead of Erick Rowan, but I think it's worked out better. And this feud still See, I'm still on the mindset that this is one of the worst feuds that I've ever witnessed, that has somehow managed to draw some level of success and intrigue out of it.
They're failing upwards.
Yeah, because it makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever, any of this stuff. But it managed to get Buddy Murphy onto TV. It's made Erick Rowan seem more of a star than he's felt like in ages. Luke Harper is now back and he's looking good as well.
They have their first names.
Yeah, Daniel Bryan is seemingly turning babyface again, and the crowd are behind him. It's giving Roman Reigns something to sink his teeth into when he's not fighting for the WWE Championship. So it's working out surprisingly well for something that makes absolutely zero sense. And I'm worried that something even more nonsensical is going to happen on the Hell in a Cell card, which is Daniel Bryan turns on Roman Reigns and joins back up with Erick Rowan and Luke Harper. Which
I will be so fucking pissed if they do that.
Well, 'cause at that point you just go, okay, so you allowed yourself to be chokeslammed multiple times through announce tables and lost a pretty brutal match to Erick Rowan last week on SmackDown, and that was your plan. That's like, but I mean, that is very, very, very Vince Russo.
If they do that, I mean, we've talked about 7 or 8 different types of reasons why I would dislike this card. Especially if we got, I'm getting all nervous about this now. If we get Hell in a Cell, where they wait until Hell in a Cell to announce a bunch of impromptu matches, and there are a bunch of things that we've been seeing on Raw and SmackDown, like a 6-man tag team match with the OC, and Shinsuke Nakamura against Ali, and Gable versus Corbin, and they all end up having these stupid, non-finish type things as well on top of that, and they end up having Daniel Bryan be like, haha, I got you, I'm actually a heel. I'm going to fucking hate this pay-per-view so much. It's gonna drive me crazy, because I'm already so goddamn exhausted from this week, and you gotta tack on a bunch of extra days going forward. Somehow NXT tonight, AEW tonight, articles, trying to figure out the pay-per-view prediction stuff, Friday night SmackDown, 205 Live, catch up on the pay-per-views again, do the pay-per-view coverage, and that's the shit that they do, and they end up doing this Daniel Bryan thing. Furious. I'm gonna be so goddamn mad. And it could happen.
The only way that I would slightly be able to justify it is if Daniel Bryan decides, either during the match or in the build-up to it, that he can't beat the combined power of Rowan and Harper and decides to just align with them. But that means that he'd have to be an understudy to them as opposed to the leader, which you'd assume would be his role. Because if he's... I would have to say that if he's masterminded this situation in, the biggest air quotes you could possibly put, masterminded him being beaten up by his 2 underlings constantly just to put Roman Reigns into a full sense of security. I just think, what have you gained from that? It's one of those things where it's a swerve for sake of a swerve. It's not actually done anything realistic. You've just said, oh, Daniel Bryan has fooled Roman Reigns by helping him lose a match on a pay-per-view. Yay. And also I would think, why does Daniel Bryan hate Roman Reigns so much? What is it about Roman? What does Erick Rowan hate about Roman Reigns so much? Why did he try and kill him 2 or 3 times? Has that kind of been lost in the whole thing? Why does Erick Rowan hate Roman Reigns?
Yeah, that's true.
If he did, because most of the stuff that he's been saying in interviews is about how he's a bigger deal and he wants the spotlight and he should be getting more attention and not just be a background heavy. And that seems like, okay, that's why you turned on Daniel Bryan. But why have you been trying to kill Roman Reigns all this time? Because it's not so much a case of just beating up Roman Reigns and that's how he's trying to get his attention. Because you could do that by beating him up from behind or attacking him with some sort of weapon and leaving him laid out. But he instead tried to push over a load of heavy boxes onto him and then tried to run him over in his car.
If they wanted to be nuanced about this a little bit and try to play into something that I think would be a little bit too risky as far as political correctness and stuff, they could kind of make it be oh, he's got that kind of, I don't know if there's like a syndrome for it or some kind of a disorder technically or anything like that, but that tendency that some people have where they're just like they're off just enough that they can't really tell what's going too far, where it would be like that dude that recently, a couple months ago or weeks ago or whatever it was, where he was at the bagel shop and somebody like asked him how tall he was and he went on that fucking tirade. You know which guy I'm talking about?
No, unfortunately, is that more an American news story?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's just some kind of short guy. And he's like flipping out. There's videos on YouTube of like people recording him and stuff, and he's all like, every time I go fucking anywhere, people make fun of my height, and he's like threatening to like fight people and all this, and it's like you gotta kind of assume that somebody ahead of time is just like, hey, how short are you? Or like, how tall are you, or whatever, and he's just kind of like, fuck, like just.
Well, so you're just
flipping
assuming
out.
that, I don't know, Roman Reigns walked past Erick Rowan behind the scenes and said, "Is your beard actually real?" And then he just went crazy and tried to kill him off.
Like, there could be the type of thing where it's like he thinks that there's this big feud going on with Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns is just like, dude, I never fucking pay attention to you. And it's like, well, of course you don't, and I'm gonna like go crazy because you're not paying attention to me, and everybody should pay attention to me, and you're the figurehead, and to get your attention, I'm going to murder you instead of doing that. And then it would be like, whoa, dude, you're taking it to an 11 here. You could have just been like, have a promo and just be like, hey, Roman Reigns, I want to prove myself. You know, they could do something like that. They won't by any means, but that would be kind of interesting if it was like, yeah, Rowan doesn't understand the context of what's going too far. And a regular beatdown with like Samoa Joe, for instance, he kept doing the whole thing where he was like, look, I don't like Roman Reigns and all that, but I wouldn't do that. It could kind of be like, Rowan's the type of guy that doesn't get the hint that he's taking something well past what he should. And Luke Harper's just fucking there for some reason. I don't know why. Luke's his friend. He's egging him on. He's got the elbow and he's like, you know, kind of neat. I run him over with a car. Like that kind of thing. And then he does it and he goes, he fucking did it.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Oh, man. Then it just turns into a comedy angle. That'd be hilarious.
Hey,
Rowan, you know, it'd be real great if you really are interested in dating Kayla Braxton. How about you knock over a bunch of things backstage and nearly kill Roman Reigns? That'll impress her. Oh, God. This is... sleep-deprived Tony should not write for fucking WWE. It'd be amazing, though. I'd love it.
It'd make more sense than what they're currently doing with this story.
Story.
Yeah.
You know. Pritchard gives credit to Russo on the Something to Wrestle With podcast all the time. He says, you know, a lot of these ideas weren't necessarily good, but at least everybody had a story. I hope this is just Bryan as a babyface now, and Bryan and Roman either win or lose. I don't have a horse in this race. I'm okay with either scenario happening. How you feeling about the win or loss?
I think to make this in any way meaningful, Rowan and Harper need to win. Because it just doesn't feel like... It feels like Bryan and Roman winning is just the end of it, which I'm not entirely against, but it just feels like the wrong place to do it. So I would say if anything has to happen, then it's Rowan and Harper win the match, and I'm not entirely convinced that Bryan won't turn on Roman.
Part of me kind of feels like there's going to be a normal tag team match here, and the reason why they did the normal tag team match isn't necessarily because Hell in a Cell is already gimmicky, but because they want to wait and do a gimmick match later on. And I don't know about the whole situation with the Saudi Arabia show, who's going to show up and who isn't. Roman Reigns did show up for the last one, but Daniel Bryan seems to be kind of against it. He wasn't a part of the Super Showdown, right?
No, he hasn't been part of the last two Saudi Arabia shows. So
maybe on SmackDown, for instance, next week, maybe we get like a street fight, and that could be the end of the feud.
Wow, after the street fight last time, I love the fact I love it when they go from, okay, so the street fight didn't resolve the issue. We need to go straight into a normal rules-based tag team match.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next logical progression onto this stuff. This again makes no logical sense, but it's somehow getting people over and getting people interested.
Yeah, I could see that being the case, though. I could see them just being like tag team street fight, that ends the feud. Or if they don't call it street fight, they, you know, some of the 15 other names that they've got. if you saw them clash at Hell in a Cell, well, this week on SmackDown, an Extreme Rules match with Bryan and Roman against, like they could do that kind of thing.
Mm.
If it is just this tag team match and that's the end of it, and Roman and Bryan win, it's going to feel a little deflated.
Yeah.
And if they do Harper and Rowan win, then where else really do they have from that point? Unless if Bryan does turn it, then they could do some kind of thing with that. But like if it's just that Bryan and Roman lose, then at that point you need a gimmick match or something.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I think it does need to continue because it just doesn't feel like it's ready to end yet. Whatever this feud is.
WWE is the only place, as far as like entertainment goes, that I can imagine a scenario being so like we can toss out a million logical ideas and a million illogical ideas, and they have the same validity to them. Like right now, what popped into my mind was I wouldn't be shocked if they announced a Hell in a Cell match for next SmackDown.
No, that wouldn't be out of the question whatsoever.
Like that is just crazy that they could be like, we had a regular tag team match at Hell in a Cell, and if you liked their tag team match, well, the Hell in a Cell is not ending yet because on SmackDown we're gonna have a Hell in a Cell match between them, and that way we get a gimmick that people might want to tune into. It would not shock me, and it's like any other company, I kind of can't imagine that being the case. Like you don't look at like projection. Well, who gives really like projections and predictions as far as like what Pepsi's going to do or something like that? But like, I don't know. Even like other TV shows and stuff. Like, you don't watch a whole lot of TV, but what you do watch, do you think that there's like any shows where you're like, yeah, they could just do this completely illogical thing and it would make sense?
Well, The Simpsons, obviously, or anything like any sort of like cartoon show which doesn't really hold any bearing from one episode to the other. They can do whatever, I guess. But no, I can't think of anything that has so many that can just flip and go into a completely different direction. WWE, but WWE is a completely different animal to basically any other TV show.
It's so strange. Like, Modern Family, I wouldn't be like, okay, well, next season of Modern Family, I could see them killing off half the cast. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. They're going to continue to do their shit the way that they normally do and follow a logical progression on certain things. And it's so weird, WWE.
Admittedly, they have even more time to plan this stuff out than WWE does. Because they shoot, I don't know, they spend like a couple of weeks or months shooting a season, then it comes out, and then there's, I don't know, it only runs for 3 or 4 months, and then they're back to the drawing board again. They can plan all this stuff out over time without any interruptions or having to do any other stuff in the meantime.
Yeah, but I mean, WWE, like we talked about, they could announce matches for the card.
Oh no, they can do. They can do. They're not hitting the bare minimum right now. I will agree to that. But they do have other pressures that most TV shows don't have.
And as I mentioned before, if you want more TV talk, go to fanboysanonymous.com. Head up to Patreon for that too if you want specifically more TV talk. I'd love to do like a review point breakdown at the end of the season of a show like A Modern Family, or like talk about my favorite moments from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I'd fucking love that so much. So if you want to do that, keep that in mind. Ultimately, gun to your head, who's winning the tag team match? I'm going Roman and Bryan.
Rowan and Harper.
All right, everybody, drop a comment below. Tell us what you think. Reminder about that. Let's go to. I'm gonna lump these in together because there's no way I'm not going to be able to reference one or the other. We've got the 2 Hell in a Cell matches are the Raw Women's Championship match between Sasha Banks challenging Becky Lynch, and the Universal Championship match, Seth Rollins defending the title against Bray Wyatt. I'm just going to lay my cards out on the table here. There's an ace. No, I'm just kidding. I think that both titles are changing hands, and that this is predominantly a move that is to appease Fox. And Fox wants The Fiend, according to certain reports. I don't know if that's something that they're going to really be willing to change around. I think it's more likely, as convoluted as it is, that Sasha beats Becky, because they want to keep the momentum on Sasha. And Bray Wyatt beats Seth Rollins, so that way they don't lose the heat from The Fiend. And USA gets to keep The Fiend to appease them. Brock Lesnar wins the WWE Championship. That appeases Fox. Both Seth and Becky go over to SmackDown on the draft because you keep the couples together. And that way you don't have to keep the Universal Championship on Seth Rollins. And I mean, technically he couldn't at the same time because you're not going to swap Brock Lesnar over. And we get Sasha and Bray as the new champions coming out of this. That's kind of where I'm thinking.
Yeah, I pretty much am thinking along the same lines. I don't think you can do Sasha and Becky again without having Sasha win after you pretty much did a non-finish in the last one. It's either Becky's winning and she's staying on Raw and Sasha's not really going anywhere at this point. The only other place it would be is if Charlotte was to win the SmackDown Women's Championship, they move Sasha over to SmackDown because, you know, she's got blue hair and all that other stuff. And you move Bayley over to Raw to feud with Becky Lynch, and that's the direction you're going. Or if you have, I mean, that could still impact on what happens in the other Hell in a Cell match, because if Seth Rollins loses, he doesn't have to necessarily move over to SmackDown. It essentially, what it will boil down to steal one of your classic phrases, is by the end of the draft, Becky Lynch and Bayley will be on one side and Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks will be on the other.
Yep.
And it depends on which one they do it.
I kind of think that maybe Fox wants Becky because they're looking at that as being like, well, she's the hot ticket, so we really want Becky. Fuck you. We will do anything to have Becky.
Well, as far as I'm aware, Fox wants everyone.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't blame them either. Like,
no.
Why wouldn't they? They don't have no means to help out USA.
And so they decided to go in the direction, which is the very WWE thing of doing is, okay, Fox wants everyone, so we're going to completely split the rosters down the middle, and there's going to be no more wildcard rule or anything like that. And the wildcard rule was stupid when it was first introduced, but now we're in a situation where a wildcard rule would actually be pretty useful, and you're going to completely separate the rosters.
Yeah.
Because like US only gets some of them, Fox only gets some of them, and we'll hold a draft each year and you'll get to see some other ones. Essentially sacrifices have to be made. And I don't know how clear, well, obviously no knowledge behind the scenes right now of what's being discussed and what promises WWE have made to who's going to be appearing on Fox, who's going to be appearing on USA. It wouldn't surprise me if they promised that one person or a couple of people is going to be appearing on Fox, and they've promised the same thing. They're actually going to be on USA as well, when they're just waiting until the day of the draft. And well, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. Probably is the big phrase to use there. I don't know. It's certain that obviously whatever side Becky Lynch ends up, Seth Rollins will be there as well, because they do not break couples up, especially like their big power couple they have right now.
Right.
So,
and Charlotte and Andrade will be on the same brand.
Yeah, of course.
And I got to imagine that Charlotte and Becky are going to be on opposite brands.
You'd imagine so, because you can't have them feuding over the title again. It's just been too much over the last 2 years. They need to break for each other. And there's been
basically, go ahead.
I'd say there's been a long enough gap between the Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks rivalry from like late 2016 that they're completely fine to be feuding again for the title.
Yeah. It's basically, to me, one brand is going to have Flair, Andrade, Aleister Black, Zelina Vega, and not Bayley.
No,
most
Banks.
likely.
Yeah, Banks.
There would need to be Sasha Banks. So, in that way, the only thing that you have to move there is Sasha goes over to SmackDown. And then, in reverse, Monday Night Raw has to have Bayley, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch. So, the opposite brand as well, too. You need Universal Champion, you need WWE Champion. If Brock Lesnar is the SmackDown Champion, then Rollins, if he is the Universal Champion, he has to stay on Raw. And if Bray Wyatt's the champion, then Rollins can move. It's all like, you got to fit all the puzzle pieces in together kind of a thing. And what's kind of confusing to me a little bit in that regard is if they go with the Survivor Series breakdown that we've had for the past couple of years, and it's Raw versus SmackDown, part of me, as much as the idea is really interesting, and a lot of people were really kind of like, "Oh, I'd love to see that," I kind of can't see them doing Bray Wyatt versus Brock Lesnar.
No, that would be. I mean, I think that's a match they need to do at some point. It's actually got some intrigue and like it's sort of match that you would pay to see, or a lot of people at least now would pay to see. So it would feel weird to just do it on a Survivor Series show where they're doing Raw against SmackDown. It's leading to my suspicion, which I've had for quite a few weeks or months now, in that I don't think they're going to do the Raw versus SmackDown thing, the Survivor Series. I think they're going back to just teams that are on each side of the it's going to be I don't know, Team Lesnar versus Team Rollins or Team Becky against Team Bayley on whatever, that sort of thing, as opposed to the Raw versus SmackDown breakdown. Because I just don't think they're in a situation right now that they can actually do it. They might return to it next year. I just feel like they've put themselves into a situation where they can't do it this year.
And they do swap things around all the time. They do take where something is supposed to be like a guarantee and they don't do it. Like, we've gotten 2 different Survivor Series in the past that have been mostly WWE Championship tournaments, which is strange.
And it feels like the odd time to do it. As soon as you've separated, you've now got a Raw brand and a SmackDown brand. It seems odd to me that the first pay-per-view you're doing off that, obviously discounting Crown Jewel because that's obviously taking place on October 31st, but after that, your first home pay-per-view, as it were, is going to be a show built around Raw versus SmackDown guys fighting each other again.
I mean, they could play into that and being like, where you've got the new rosters and now you got to play along with a new team and fight for your new brand, and they could do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But they are doing a 5-on-5 match at Crown Jewel.
But then it also holds a situation where you're going to see Raw and SmackDown guys on the opposite show again in the build-up to it, which just feels like, okay, so you had separated the roster, but you haven't separated the rosters like you said you were going to do. It just seems far too convoluted, especially if you're going to put the title on Bray Wyatt. You can't have him lose for a while. This is his second match under his new persona. And if your third match is going to be against Lesnar, Fox won't want Lesnar losing. I think WWE, if they didn't have that pressure, if Lesnar is champion, from the Fox side of things, that they've just given him the WWE Championship, they want him to look good. I think they'd be totally fine with him losing to Bray Wyatt.
I think that no matter what, they would do a non-finish.
Yeah, that would probably be the most likely outcome. But I think it would be more likely that Bray Wyatt would beat Brock Lesnar in that regard than Brock Lesnar beats Bray Wyatt in the current iteration of things. As odd as that sounds, that would be the way it would go, because the Fiend is their big thing at the moment.
And if they want to do that and they want to just kind of poke the bear and hope that fans don't get annoyed with it and stuff like that, I could see them doing a whole setup of Bray versus Brock, and for a couple weeks they have the Fiend play some mind games. Brock Lesnar beats the crap out of random people to try to prove himself, and whatever it is that they want to do. They probably wouldn't even bother doing that to begin with. And when they actually end up having that match, it ends up being like they all start fighting before the bell rings and the referee's like, no, we're not going to have a match, and then they roll that as a draw. That's how I think that would end up going down, and people would be like, oh, that's such a cop-out, and people would be like, yeah, I know, but TLC's coming up. Well,
that's also part of the reason why I'm still not entirely convinced that Kofi Kingston will lose the title, just because I think there must be somebody behind the scenes that you could put Lesnar into a hot feud with, and that could be his distraction for a few months before he does come back and fight for the title, and then you could easily have Kingston lose against Bray Wyatt. So that's what. But I don't know. I'm not putting a lot of stock into the Survivor Series planning because I just don't know what approach they're going to take with it, because it doesn't feel like at the moment with the titles position where they are and the roster's position the way they are, or at least maybe post the draft, that they don't have all the pieces in place to do an effective Raw versus SmackDown pay-per-view.
I feel like The fact that they haven't set up a lot of things for Hell in a Cell, and we've got Crown Jewel, and we've got Survivor Series, and we've got War Games, and we've got Starrcade, and we've got TLC, and the draft. If WWE has not planned this stuff out going back at least a month ago, it's going to be total chaos until a couple weeks before WrestleMania.
Yeah, seems about right.
Like, there's maybe a chance, that after Survivor Series, they sort out a TLC card, and while they're planning out the TLC card, they've gotten a little bit more of a firm idea of which roster replacement they want to go with, and then they can sort of plan out Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber and Fastlane and all the other kind of things that go along with that. But even then, we don't know what's happening with NXT UK. We don't know what's happening with NXT, with 205 Live. I'm really feeling like we're in for like 6 more months of just total chaos again. And it's going to be like, we're going to look back and they're going to do like another superstar shakeup or something like that after WrestleMania. And we're going to be like, my God, for like a 2.5 year period, it was just insanity of all this. And for all we know, 10 minutes from now, they might announce 6 matches on the card because that's just the thing. WWE. Driving me crazy. So I'm going Bray Wyatt winning the title. I'm going Sasha Banks winning the title. What are your predictions?
Exactly the same. Fiend wins the Universal title. Banks wins the Raw Women's Championship.
For that matter, I'll put this out there, because if we're tossing out things going for the next bunch of months, if Bray Wyatt wins this championship and they have Brock against Bray, not only are they doing the no contest thing, but I also think that Bray Wyatt's keeping that until WrestleMania and he's losing it to Braun Strowman or Roman Reigns. I could very easily see Roman Reigns going from SmackDown over to Raw to help appease USA and beating Bray Wyatt for the Universal Championship.
Oh yeah, I think the 3 options to beat the Fiend eventually are Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, and Finn Balor.
Yeah.
Do the demon against the Fiend. Because they're going to do that eventually. I just don't know whether they'll actually have the Fiend lose to him.
Shit, at that time, if we're talking about the whole like the draft thing screwing this up and all that, you know what? Why not? We'll round out our discussion with this. And now I'm thinking Roman Reigns moves over to Monday Night Raw to balance out Seth Rollins. And that means that the Roman Reigns and Erick Rowan and Daniel Bryan and Luke Harper feud ends before the draft. And that's all the more reason that they do some kind of a big blow-off thing on the next episode of SmackDown. I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that seems like it could happen. But again, we are thinking logically here.
Yeah. Well, no matter what happens, we are going to be covering it on smarkoutmoment.com. I will update the predictions all the way up until the pay-per-view, and then we will do the pay-per-view like post-show after the pay-per-view is done. That'll be in podcast form. There are no more podcast predictions. It's just going to be on smarkoutmoment.com, so check out that for any kind of updates when they do end up doing that. I will also somehow be having my usual breakdown on the other types of platforms, like my heat index for e-wrestling news. I've got a bunch of roundtable questions that we're going to do for that, and they're mostly reflecting the idea that we have no idea what the hell this card is, and I'm going to try to figure out superstars missing from the card. I usually do that on Tuesday night after SmackDown. Now it would just be like everybody on the roster, essentially, so I can't post that. All this is happening without knowing what's happening on SmackDown, but SmackDown I'll be having live coverage on smarkoutmoment.com and having a breakdown of that kind of stuff as well going forward. NXT's tonight in a couple hours. Who knows what's happening with that? AEW's tonight. I can't watch them both at the same time, but eventually you'll find something on smarkoutmoment.com for AEW. Just keep paying attention. Follow the Facebook and Twitter. Hit up the merchandise shop if you want to keep me a little sane and have me get some emails of some t-shirts that have been purchased or something like that. Hit up the Patreon if you want even more so to directly influence my ability to keep doing these kind of things. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Follow Callum and check out what he's got going on. Toss out any things you got there as well, Callum.
Well, you can check out the weekly articles on smark.com, including the power rankings, to which I contribute, which will coming out a little bit later than usual due to the whole change of things. It's a big mess. WWE makes things a big mess. Other than that, you've got 2001 Wrestling Odyssey, which is our retro podcast, where me and Robert DeFelice, if he ever gets his internet back, will be traveling back in time to the year 2001, the last year that wrestling changed forever, as opposed to this one, where WCW died, ECW died. We're on the October edition, and of like our month by month breakdown, which means we'll be covering No Mercy 2001 as well as the first All-Star Wrestling show. So that'll be fun to watch. And other than that, you can follow me on Twitter at WeekMaster14. And that's my plugs out of the way.
Alrighty, everybody, that's going to do us in for this edition. As I mentioned before, drop your comments below. Tell us what you think is going to happen here at Hell in a Cell and what you think about our predictions and everything else that we've discussed here. Thank you for listening to this. We'll see you for the post-show, and we'll see you for everything else on smarkoutmoment.com. But that'll be the end of this episode. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we're being counted out.